Good afternoon. My name is Alan McCoy. I'm Director of Startup Support at the University of Maryland's Ventures. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who joined us today for the next installment in Startup Fundamentals Workshop Series. This series is offered by Ventures with collaboration from Maryland Technology Enterprise Institute and Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship at the university. Everyone attending the live session, please feel free to submit questions. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can use that. And we have recorded this session. It will be posted on our Startup UMD YouTube channel. So if you would like, you can submit your questions anonymously. So today's workshop will be taught by an experienced entrepreneur, angel investor, and well-known and sought-after business coach. You will learn the secrets of effective pitching, from crafting a captivating narrative and structuring a winning pitch, to using visuals and mastering Q&A sessions. Glen Hellman is an executive coach at CXO Elevate and an instructor with NSF I-Corps at the University of Maryland. He's also a published author of 2 books so far. More books are upcoming. The first book is Intentional Leadership, a guide to define yourself as a leader, engender trust and confidence in order to build and lead high performance teams. Very important for startups. And the second book is called Cipher and Size, a high stakes global suspense thriller of love, loyalty, and deceit. I'm personally in the process of reading the second one book right now. Both books are available on Amazon.com and also on Kindle. So Glen, thank you so much for joining us today and leading this very important session. Last week, we heard from Mike Ravenscroft about what happens when the investor actually is interested in your startup. And today, we will learn from you. Looking forward to learning from you. How do we get there? How do we convince investors to take a look at our startups? So thank you, and microphone is all yours.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm going to share my screen. And welcome, everybody. So, as Ala said, last week, the session covered due diligence. Think of due diligence as you're already engaged and about to get married. Pitching is more like being on Tinder, and all you want to do is give enough information, get enough interest, so somebody swipes right. So that's what we're going to talk about. How do you get people to swipe right and want to get into the serious dating phase? First thing I want to talk about is one of the mistakes that many of us make when we're presenting to anybody is we speak to a brain that we assume is logical, but is often illogical. Humans make logical decisions illogically, and I'm going to prove that to you. So if I was foolish enough to say, I need a dollar bill, I have a $5 bill, anybody who gives me a dollar bill, I will give you 5. I will make a bet that everybody in the audience would take that offer. I'm going to use the same utilitarian mathematics, and we're going to go through some extremes on that. Imagine that you are, imagine a trolley coming down the track, and there's 5 people tied down on the track. Those 5 people are destined to die, expire. Now I want you to imagine that those same 5 people are on a track, but you, the possible hero, are near a switch. If you flip the switch, the trolley will divert to a secondary track. Unfortunately, there's 1 person on that track. But if you do the switch, you'll save 5 lives, you'll give up 1. When I do this with a live audience, typically 70 to 80% of the people say they would flip the switch. Now let's make it a little more extreme. Remember, this is still trading in saving 5 in return for losing 1. Now you're on a bridge. There's 5 people tied on that trolley, tied down to the tracks. The trolley's coming their way. There is a person who's large enough that if you push them off the bridge, it will stop the trolley and save 5 lives. When I do this in an audience, typically only about 20 to 30% of the audience says they would push that person to save 5 lives. So there's something going on here. Now I'm going to take it to the most extreme. Imagine there are 5 people. Each one needs a certain organ. Somebody needs a heart. Somebody needs a lung. So each one. And there is a perfectly healthy human in the room who has every part all those people need. So how many people would strap that person down, harvest their organs to save 5 lives? The math in these cases are all the same, but something happens that changes how we react to it. What is that? What makes the difference between everybody taking the $5 in exchange for 1 to nobody willing to strap that perfectly healthy body down to save 5 people's lives? It's all based on evolution. We really have 3 major functioning parts of our brain. The first part, the often called the reptilian brain, includes the brainstem and the basal ganglia. This is the part of the brain that includes breathing. It's breathing. All of our heartbeat controls heartbeat, motor movements, eye movements. This is one part of a brain, and it was developed 280 million years ago. This is a brain we share with reptiles today. That's why it's called the reptilian brain often. The next part, when the first mammals started walking the earth 160 million years ago, we developed this next region of the brain, the limbic system. This is where emotions come from. Alligators don't have emotions. Mammals do. This is where the hippocampus is, which often strikes our fear mode, thalamus, a whole bunch of parts of the brain are in here. It's where parental instinct comes from. Mammals protect their young, reptiles eat their young. So this part of the brain was developed 120 years after the first part. And then humans came along. The first humans 2.5 million years ago versus present day. So the point here is, what's happening is, while our frontal cortex and our neocortex is what makes us human, it's the part of our brain that has logic, language, can handle abstract thinking. It is only 1/3 of the part of the brain that makes decisions. We make decisions based on emotions. And when we present, we need to present to all parts of the brain, including the part of the brain that does not understand language or abstract concepts. So let me tell you about the reptilian brain, which has a major influence on how we make decisions. First of all, it only sees good, bad, black, white. It is a binary engine. It does not understand the difference between gray areas. When you're presenting, you need to make the choice of moving with you, making a decision to invest in you or not invest in you, a black and white decision. If it's a gray, that part of the brain will be paralyzed. It's very visual. This is why a picture tells 1,000 words. Our eyes are directly connected to the reptilian brain. And I can't see who's there. I can't do a poll, but if I asked you, do you know what you would call a species whose eyes were connected to the frontal cortex and had to go through the frontal cortex, the limbic system, and the reptilian brain before it made a decision, what you'd call that animal is extinct, because we react to what we see before we understand exactly what it is. We will jump away from a garden hose because it looks like a snake before we say, oh no, that's just a garden hose. We are visual. We make decisions with visual inputs. We are programmed to avoid danger. And in fact, humans will run away from risk much harder than they would run towards a greater gain. And this is proved in game economics. So we avoid risk. What this means is when you're presenting to investors, you're presenting to a person who says, just give me a reason to walk away and not invest, because investing is a risk. We're self-centered. We're always tied into radio station WIFM. What's in it for me? So when we're presenting to an investor we need to make it very clear that there's a win for them, that there's something important for them. We need to lower risk and prove there's a win. We need to talk in tangible non-abstractions. We need to give proof, and we need to have non-abstractions. So I'll give you an example of that. But if I tell you that 10,000 people died in a fire, that's an abstraction. It doesn't affect us the same way if I talked about a child by name and gave you their history and talked about the one person. One person is not an abstraction. And Joseph Stalin once said, 1,000 deaths is a statistic, one death is a tragedy. When we're pitching, we don't want to start talking about major markets. We want to talk about who our best user is and what their pain is and why they use it, or why they will use our product. Why do people always talk about pain? Because pain is a sign that your body's at risk. Pain is a sign that you're in danger. And without pain, there is no change. So a concept that I want you to keep in mind when you're pitching is hurt, rescue. Hurt, rescue. You want to make the person, put the person in the seat of pain of your best user before you rescue them and tell them what the solution is. And again, we want to talk about a singular human, not 10,000 possible buyers. We'll build up to that. So pitching is a 3-chapter story. The first chapter is wake these people up, wake your audience up, let them know that this is an important thing they should listen to. Keep them awake, keep them interested. So the first chapter is short. We're going to go through a first chapter. The second chapter is, now that I believe that you may have something interesting, why should I trust you to execute on it? And the third chapter is, what's in it for me? Appeal to my greed. So pretend I invented aspirin and I'm pitching it to a group of investors. I can talk about the chemicals that are involved. I can talk about how how it works, what it does in the brain, all these other high concepts that are abstractions. I could talk about the size of the market, or I can tell a story. Now, why are stories so important when we're pitching or when we want to get a point across is because stories create a vision in a person's mind. They create emotions, and they have this impact on our brains that just a group of slides and statistics cannot duplicate. So I want you all to imagine that you are a working mom, that you go to work every day, you have children to take care of, yet you get constant headaches. Headaches so bad you can't function, so bad you can't go to work, so bad you can't take care of your children. It's debilitating. It seriously affects your life, your job, your relationship with your children, and your family. What if one little pill, 2 little pills, with 85% efficacy could restore you back to normal, where you could work with your children, you can go to work, you can lead a normal life. Do you think you'd want to buy those tablets? Well, there are in the how many people? So we've just talked about the single, we've just appealed to the emotions about a single use case. Then we build it up to how large the potential for this solution could be. Now that I've got that person's interest in these 3 slides, and typically you do this interest in 3 to 4 slides, depending on if you have a 2-sided market or a 1-sided market. And sometimes you'll have a 3-sided market, but typically it's 3 to 4 slides to get their attention. Then we move to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is where we say, where we've gotten the person, we assume that we've gotten the audience's attention. They think this is a great idea and somebody's going to solve it. Now, why should I trust you to solve it? And what we want to talk about is, what is the unique value proposition? What makes us different than any other choice? So before there was aspirin, people used to drink coffee. What's my unique value proposition? 1, it works 15% faster. It's 80% more effective. It's something that you can carry around in your pocket and take easily. That's my unique value proposition over coffee. By the way, before coffee, the other solution was a hammer. You see, because if you hit your head with a hammer, when you stop, it feels really good and you forget you had a headache. Bad joke, sorry. You also want to talk about the competitive landscape. And you want to do that graphically. You want to talk and let them know you understand that markets, people don't just come to you. It is very difficult to create something that with no push has virility, goes viral. What is your plan? How will you take this to market? How will you sell it? Who will you sell it to? What partners will you have? You want to talk about the traction that you have. And if you don't have traction, you want to talk about why you would have traction. You want to talk about the unit economics so that I understand that your cost of your customer acquisition cost, that it's reasonable, that I believe that you've made good assumptions on that, and that it's less than the lifetime, that your customer acquisition cost and your cost of goods are less than your lifetime value of a customer. But you need to know what your unit economics are. You need to prove to me that you have a handle on them, and you need to be able to defend that to an investor. And then you want to talk about the team. Who are the people who are going to bring this to market? And why should I trust them to execute? What have they done before? What's their education? What's their experience? What are their qualifications? And then the final chapter is appeal to the investor's greed. And that means show me a financial plan. It should be a 5-year plan. And there are many ways of building up a 5-year plan. No investor is going to believe your 5-year plan, but what you need to do is be able to talk about it, talk about the logic behind it, and be able to defend it. And you also want to talk about comparable exits. So I want to know that if I invest $100,000 in you, that companies like yours that have executed well have returned to investors 10 to 20x what those investors have brought in. So you need to show what the valuation is of comparables. So that's the structure of a pitch. Now we're going to get into sort of the style and format. So first, if the reptilian brain is a major decision maker, if I just show my financials as numbers, which are an abstraction, do you think that a reptile would understand or be able to comprehend that that's a good chart? You always want to do things with graphics. You want to show that the constant rise in revenue and that expenses don't rise in concert with revenue, that profits grow as sales grow. You want to be able to show that and have somebody see it so that it has more impact and that it speaks directly to the reptilian brain. The other thing is remember that reptilian brain has no concept or no ability for language. So when we just put wordy charts up there with lots of words, we want our audience, everybody's reading this chart. Nobody's looking at me. Nobody's wondering what I'm saying or listening to what I'm saying. We want to use as much imagery as we can. A picture tells 1,000 words. And then we want to keep it simple. So by keep it simple, Guy Kawasaki, who's an investor and a marketing guru in the startup world, has his rules, which are 10, 20, 30. No more than 10 slides. You can have 12. No more than 20 minutes. That's a hard and fast rule. Try to get down to 10 to 12 minutes because people's attention spans are short. Go for 30-point font, make it readable. And then you got Hellman's rules. No more than 7 words per bullet and no more than 5 bullets. Keep your verbiage small, your imagery large. And the reason you want them to look at you is your presence has more impact than the slides you put up there. The way, the professionalism of the slides, how it looks, the visual has more impact than the words you put on it. The confidence that the confidence that you give off in your presence and how you stand, your body language has so much impact. You want people looking at you. You want people saying, I could follow that person. I could see how this person can create a team of followers and winners. So in summary, tell a story. Don't just do a list of slides. Tell a story. Keep it visual. Keep it simple. You're not going for a wedding. You're just going for a second date. So leave a little mystery in there. Don't try to anticipate every question and answer every question. Matter of fact, with the mystery, somebody's more likely to come back and ask for a second date. Hey, how are you going to do this? Than if you try to explain everything to them in a slide. And remember, your presence counts. So now I'm going to try to do something very difficult, and I'm going to try to help you and the audience write your first chapter. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let me bring up the chat so I can read. So in the chat, does anybody want to explain? Can you, some of you explain to me more about what your product is, what you're trying to sell, what you would want to pitch?
Glenn, if it helps, we can also unmute. People can raise their hand and we can unmute their mic.
That would
Would
be
that
great.
be better?
That'd be great because I can't read. I write, but I don't read.
So if anybody wants to raise their hand and I can unmute your mic, and you can be you can get
A
your lesson.
mobile,
There you go. We have
okay,
our
a
first
mobile
hand.
navigation application for wheelchair users. We're going to go with that. That's, or should we go with, yeah, let's do this. Let's do Na, and then let's go to Dawn. Na, tell me what you're looking to sell or create or pitch.
I am looking to sell a portable hand washing station, which I have engineered. And what makes my portable hand washing station different is because it doesn't need foot pumping, like the ones on the market now.
Okay, so who is your best user?
My
Who would
best
that be? As an individual, tell me age, maybe, where they work, what they do, why do they need it?
My best user first will be at the Veterans Hospital or the rehabilitation centers for veterans.
Okay,
And this will be for wounded veterans who cannot use their legs to pump the present portable hand washing station on the market.
okay, okay. So imagine that you've served our country and that you've served our country, you've served it well, you've served it with dignity, you've served it with honor, and you were wounded, critically wounded. So now that you're wheelchair bound, you don't have use of your legs. Some of the issues you have are how do you operate? How do you wash your hands? How do you keep them clean? How do you operate a, so is that, does that address the pain?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So that's your, and by the way, when we're pitching, imagine is a very powerful word. Because if I tell you, even if I tell you, don't imagine a pink elephant, everybody in the audience just saw a pink elephant. They were different shades, they were different sizes, but everybody just saw it. Imagine is a great word. So imagine you are, because we want to put the audience in the seat of pain. We want to try to make them feel the pain.
Okay.
The second slide is, what if you could? So what if you could, tell me what that would be, Na?
What if you could just go to a portable hand washing station, just stretch your hand and automatic soap dispenser will release soap in your hands. And
Okay.
then there's a faucet, automatic faucet that will release water into your hands for you to wash your hands.
Okay. So what if you could wash your hands with the same ability as a fully functioning person with fully functioning arms and legs and no additional effort. And you can wash up using that. Would that improve your life? Would that be worth investing in?
Yes, sir.
Well,
Okay.
there are. Now we're slide 3. Well, there are. So how many potential users are there who need that solution? So I say, so first thing I'd say is, there's a problem. I want you to understand it. There are people in pain. This is how we solve the problem. And then the third slide says, and there are enough people here that this is a huge problem and can be very profitable to solve or worthwhile.
Well, okay.
Okay, let's go with Dawn.
Thank
Dawn
you.
has a mobile navigation application for wheelchair users. So, Dawn, can you unmute? Dawn? Ala, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I am trying to find Don here. Yes. Yeah, Don, you can talk.
All right, Dawn. Tell me about why. So, who's your best user, and what is the problem they have?
Okay, they're wheelchair users who are mobility impaired. Usually they live downtown. And what we've learned is that 1 in 3 people who are in a wheelchair don't leave their house because they're afraid to go out because the sidewalks are not accessible.
Okay, great. Okay. And how do they wash their hands? No, but so imagine you're a wheelchair user and your life has been so frustrated because every time you try to leave the home, you encounter stumbling blocks. You can't get from point A to point B because there's no the sidewalks don't allow it. There's other impediments. What if there was a, a GPS system specifically to navigate for the safe way, for a safe way for you to leave your home easily and quickly get to your destination and avoid all those impediments?
Exactly.
So there are X amount of people. That's
Mhm.
slide 2. There are X amount of people. Slide 1 is imagine if.
Mhm.
Slide 2 is what if there was. And slide 3 is there are 50 million people just in the United States alone who suffer from this issue.
Exactly.
Okay,
Can
I
I
want to,
ask one more question?
yes, but I want you to send me your slides. Develop that pitch. I want everybody to send me your slides. I'll give you a review.
Okay, cool.
What do you have, Don? What's the question?
Um, well, Glen, my beachhead is wheelchair users. That's my beachhead. And I've learned through iCore and a lot of market research, there's a lot of other customers who would buy the data, not so much be interested in whether a wheelchair user moves around okay or not.
Okay.
And so how do you put that in a pitch deck when you still want them to understand that our most important member is the wheelchair user, but we recognize that there are incredible verticals over here?
Okay, so 2 things. One is I'm going to challenge you that your beachhead is wheelchair users. I don't
Okay,
think that's specific enough. Okay. Um, so there's it's very important to narrow your beachhead. Now we're talking about selling strategy and go-to-market strategy versus pitching. So
Mhm.
when we pitch those first 3 slides, we want to talk about the total addressable market, not just a beachhead.
Okay.
But there are wheelchair, there are people who are wheelchair bound who are more likely to buy your product than other people who are wheelchair bound. And that determination could be cultural, could be socioeconomic, could be, maybe people in Florida, go out in their wheelchairs more. Maybe there are more people in Florida. So it could be geographical.
Yeah,
But for all of us, when we go to market, it is more efficient for us to narrow the first beachhead, the actual beachhead. So what I always talk to people when I'm in iCore is I talk about how you should imagine your total addressable market as as the bowling pins in a bowling alley. Eventually, you're going to take down all 10 pins, but it's a lot. You don't throw the bowling ball at all 10 pins. You'd never get a strike. You throw it at a strategic pin. You hit it with just enough force in the right direction so it takes down all the other pins.
Mhm.
The more narrow the pin that you choose, the more efficiently you can attack it with marketing and sales dollars. The more one of the things you want to look at is how viral is it. So if you just went after a geographical area, and if I had 3 people with wheelchairs using it, they start talking to each other, and I can get more virality because I have density. So
Mhm.
we want to think about all the things. We want to really narrow the beachhead.
Okay.
When we're pitching, in those first 3 slides, we will talk about the best customer. But in the what's in it for me, that's when we say a couple things. We say, well, this is our initial beachhead market, our total addressable market, and you give them all the different segments. And you might even give them a sequence on how you would plan on attacking those segments once you reach some kind of large market penetration. So if you had 30% of the wheelchair users in Florida,
Mhm.
then it's time to start branching out and go to other warm states where people go outside in their wheelchairs more than people in Minnesota.
Right. Makes
You
sense.
just show them sort of how you're going to attack each segment to get to the
Okay.
total addressable market.
Okay.
What you want to show them is you're going to be efficient with capital.
Mhm.
And that's how, it costs billions of dollars to go after every possible wheelchair user.
Right.
All right, how about, is it Yassine? I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce my kid's name, so if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize.
Yeah, let me unmute. Okay. Yassine, you are able to talk, and please correct us if we're not pronouncing your name correctly.
You've pronounced it correctly. Thank you. So, my idea is starting a West African fast food chain. Um, my main person that I'd be most likely selling to would be middle age, well, second generation African immigrants who most likely have better jobs that but don't also have time to be able to cook for their families.
Okay, good. So, and your beachhead then would be economic, West Coast, second generation who yearn for. So, imagine you grew up first generation West African in an area where it's not densely populated with people like you. Growing up, your grandmother used to cook these wonderful meals that you remember, and they become comfort meals for you. You don't have time, you don't have the expertise. Your grandmother's gone. Where do you get those meals? Where do you get that comfort food? What if, boom, then there was this. Now, for you, 25 years ago, only adventurous people were eating Ethiopian. Mostly Ethiopian people were eating Ethiopian food. Today, Ethiopian food is a staple. Many people go to Ethiopian restaurants. So for you, yes, your beachhead, you're going to go after people who yearn for that comfort feeling in their when they were when they were younger and lived at home. They're going back for that. That's why they start. But your total addressable market is anybody who loves ethnic dining. And you would use an experience of in your example of go to market, you would pick a type of restaurant that was ethnic, that started with a small area. You talk about this small group of people from some diaspora who started using it, and how the whole general population now dines on it. Thai food, sushi, whatever it is, you want to pick a similar, type of ethnic food that was once isolated and not really well appreciated, and have that and show the example of how that became adopted to the general population. Another thing for everybody, the reptilian brain does not like new things. If it's new, it's unfamiliar, it's dangerous. If it's familiar, well, I know I've survived seeing it before. I know I've survived eating it before. I know that it's safe. So if you're introducing a new kind of concept, you want to give an analogy of something very similar that I'm familiar with. That's why we would talk about Thai food or Indian food, or some other kind of food, and how it's just taken over. Make sense?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Who's next?
Does anybody else want to go? I can unmute your mic, or you can just type it. By the way, I'd love to try your food.
Me too.
Thank you so much.
And Allah's husband's a professional chef.
Yeah, he cooks food from all over the world, and he teaches we go to all sorts of ethnic restaurants and shop at all sorts of ethnic markets. That's the best.
So if there's nobody else who wants to sort of try a pitch or go over what a pitch should be, does anybody else have any questions for me?
Don't see anybody. And by the way, you could also look at who the audience for, like Anthony Bourdain's videos, and there are others who travel the world and talk about the cuisine around the world. Those are your people.
Now, I see your hand up. Is that left over from your last question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I just want to thank you all.
Oh, no, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. My question is, if you have like three market segments, like for instance, I have the veterans and also I have school children in mind from kindergarten to fifth grade. And then I have the restaurants also, like the ethnic restaurants also.
Okay.
So how do you include that in your slide?
So first of all, I'd ask you to pick one. And to do that, I'd say, give me a list of criteria. Write down a list of criteria of what would make a great benchmark audience, because you only want to go after one to start. So some of the things to think about is, how risk averse are they? How much budget do they have? How deep is their pain? Is the pain so strong that it outweighs the cost? Do they congregate and communicate in a small group? So for instance, veterans hospitals, they have a great communication system. If you get one, it's easier to get two. And if you get four, it's easier to get 100.
Okay.
Right? So is there a chance is there great chance for word of mouth? So you want to have a list of criteria.
Okay.
And then you want to weight that criteria, because not every criteria is as important.
Okay.
And then you want to pick your market. But you only want to pick one, because you don't want to have to advertise in a magazine for veterans hospitals or on a website for veterans hospitals. You don't want to buy Google AdWords for veterans hospitals, kids education. You want to just have all your marketing dollars spent on one small concentrated group.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So in the past, I participated in a pitch competition with my business, and I was asked for numbers, sales. They were asking for a lot of numbers.
Right.
How would you suggest I go by getting numbers, and how would you suggest I start out small?
So I would try to. So first of all, you have to actually figure out what your cost would be to start one restaurant. What's rent, what's personnel cost, and what's the cost of raw materials that I use to cook. You have to think about all those things. Then you have to find a similar type restaurant and talk to somebody about the financials. This is a lot harder in the restaurant business than it is in other startups, because the numbers aren't published anywhere. But you want to start with a ground up, justifiable first year of finances. And then you want to start making assumptions. So let's say the assumption is, I'm going to grow 30% in the next year. How do you justify the fact that you grow 30%? How does doing 30% more affect your unit economics? Do my costs go down because I'm buying in more volume? and now I'm spreading my rent across more revenue, so I'm more efficient. So you need to build it up each year. You need to give them 5 years. But you might want to start with talking to somebody in the restaurant business about their first restaurant around the same size. Start with that and then build up from there. In the software or technology world, when a company goes public, one of the most beautiful world is they have to file their past 5 years worth of financials. So in terms of unit economics, if I was going to do, for instance, for the GPS for Google Maps for the handicapped, there's probably applications that I can find that have gone public that are very similar, that have used a mapping program for bicycles or some bike maps, so there's some bike maps apps. And I'd look and see if they went public. If they did, I've got these old financials I can use to start with. So I have these ratios to know. And ratios are important when you go after the first year. The first year should always be a bottoms up financial. The years after that are based on ratios. In the second year, what's it reasonable for a rent what's the reasonable ratio for personnel cost versus revenue? What's a reasonable ratio for advertising cost versus revenue? So you look at ratios and you apply it towards your growth projections, and you have to be able to justify your growth projections. Not an easy question. I hope that helped.
And I just shared a link to the video on how to start a food business. So there's a lot of information there. But generally, in the food business, you want you need to calculate. You need to minimize your menu, and you need to make sure that your menu items are sort of swappable. And you need to make sure that your food costs are somewhere between 25 to 30%. So you need to know how much it costs for you to produce each item, how much time, and what is your throughput to produce, how many items can you produce in an hour, for example. So those are all really important things in a food business. But go ahead and take a look at that video. We'll probably schedule a repeat because there might be some updated information.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I just thank you guys for your attention. Appreciate it. And feel free. So my email is GHELL. I'll put it in the chat. Feel free to send me your first 3 slides and I'll give you a critique.
Okay.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm going to do that.
Okay, Don.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll do that. Right.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Glenn. This was fantastic, and you have a fantastic background there too. Go Terps.
We won that game.
Awesome. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who participated in the discussion as well and asking all the great questions. All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.